Saudi and Egypt, and why there's not been any political will to create a movement to counter ISIS? Is it because they see that as a viable counter to the Assad regime?
Well, with regard to the Egyptians, the Egyptian authorities are deeply opposed to Islamic State, the authorities of Sisi, without any ambiguity whatsoever. Having said that, Sisi has shown very deep reluctance to commit forces or to undertake responsibilities beyond Egypt and its immediate environment. This may change in the future, but we should remember that Egypt is engaged, perhaps it's exaggerating to say, in a low-intensity civil war, but certainly in a very serious counter-insurgency at the present time against also its own Salafi, local homegrown forces, and of course the Muslim Brotherhood also, which it is seeking to permanently delegitimize. So they've kind of got their hands full at the moment. Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis, of course, in Sinai, the most potent of the jihadi organizations engaged against Egyptian authorities, is now part of Islamic State. That's to say, it pledged bayat to Islamic State, and the pledge of allegiance was accepted by ISIS authorities. So Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis has now renamed itself Wilayat Sinai, the Sinai province, so to speak, of Islamic State. Perhaps in the months ahead, if that insurgency continues to develop, we may see a change in the Egyptian attitude vis-a-vis commitments further north, if we can put it that way. But at the present time, I think that's where things stand. The Egyptians don't want to particularly get involved. With regard to the Saudis don't regard ISIS, from everything which we can tell. Of course, it's always rather murky with the Saudis, but from everything which we can tell, the Saudis do not regard ISIS as a legitimate, as a possible, preferable alternative to the Assad regime. I think the Saudis realized quite early on, and have realized quite early on, that they can't really manipulate or use jihadi organizations in an effective way, as I say, in a way which doesn't come back to burn them. And fascinatingly, the forces that the Saudis have sought to engage with in southern Syria, which is where their main engagement has been non-jihadi forces. Have been the forces, if you remember, General Salim Idris and the Southern Command Council and all that stuff, former Syrian army officers. Those are the people that the Saudis seem to have preferred. So I think with good reason. The Saudis understand, same as they backed, of course, Sisi in Egypt, they understand that the best people that they can back actually are conservative military officers rather than jihadis. So I think that pattern is set to remain also, and I suspect that won't change anytime soon. Having said that, of course we are aware that there is private Saudi money as well as government money, and sometimes it's hard to exactly know where one starts and one ends. There's lots of very, very rich Sunni Islamists in the Gulf and also in Saudi Arabia, and it's likely that some of the money reaching Islamic State is coming from those sources. But we should remember that Islamic State's not short of money. Islamic State is able to generate its own sources of income today, also in terms of selling of contraband oil, also in terms of dealing in human trafficking, in antiquities trafficking, also in terms of the money it found in the Mosul banking system and so on and so forth.